Today, we are going to look at Airbnb's original pitch deck from 2008. They raised $600,000 and now they are above a $70 billion valuation. So this is something that is really important to you because you don't only want to put some random pitch deck out there that ticks all the boxes. The question is, what is the difference between pitch decks that really work, really catch investors' interest, and ones that just get thrown in with the pile? You see, at Ingenesis Ventures, we've interviewed, studied, or worked directly with over 2,400 startups. So it becomes very clear the patterns of what makes a startup stand out. And I hope I can share some of that with you here in this video. So let us dive straight in. Now, one thing I want you to know is I'm not going to be going into all of the basics about pitch decks as we tear down this Airbnb pitch deck. We're actually going to zoom in and spend a longer time on the pieces that really matter that can help your startup stand out. So here is the first slide: air, bed and breakfast, book rooms with locals rather than hotels. I think that this is pretty straightforward. Just be really clean and be as clear as you can about what you're doing. Now, this might actually seem a bit simple, but a lot of startups, they actually have lines that you can't comprehend. They're too vague, like, we are a data startup, we are an AI startup doing this XYZ. You really want to be as clear as you can. So I think that Airbnb did that well in slide 1, and I think that they follow that through in slide 2. So the problem, price is it should be an important concern for customers booking travel online. Hotels leave you disconnected from the city and its culture, and no easy way exists to book a room with a local or become a host. So again, I think that you can see that there's not lots of words on the screen. It's not convoluted. It is 3 very straight to the point items that show that investors are not having their time wasted and they really know what they're talking about. So simplicity, clarity, clean comprehension, I think that is what I would say with these slides. Then we come to the solution slide, a web platform where users can rent out their space to host travelers to save money when traveling, make money when hosting, and share culture, the local connection to the city. So again, isn't this interesting, like how simple it is, like coming in, giving 3 straight dot points. We've gone through the problem and the solution, and I think that would take a very short time. So with this, I think we don't want to create extra brain and cognitive power, draining that from investors. We want to really respect their time and have that as clean and clear as possible. Now let's go into market validation. And I think that this one is really interesting because a lot of startups can get a bit confused about this. You see, if I created a ladder, there are all of these different levels of validation. So some people consider validation as, I have thought about this idea myself and I think it's good, right? Others think that talking to a few people or even a large number of people, having either loose interviews or formal interviews is a form of validation. And it is, it's essentially the next step up. And then you get more formal things. So running people either through pilots, getting expressions of interest, getting people onto a wait list. So they have overtly said that they are willing and interested to participate and engage with your startup. Now, this is a very specific type of validation where what Airbnb is doing, they're taking couchsurfing.com, they're taking a type of competitor in the market, but somebody who is servicing a similar aspect of the market, but they're not exactly the same. And they're showing that they already have 660,000 users. So this is a good form of validation. I wouldn't say it's the top. Yeah, I would say it's in the middle somewhere. And then they also have Craigslist.com with 50,000 temporary housing listings per week in the US. So this is showing that activity is already happening in the market. And this allows investors to go, okay, this is not something completely new. It's definitely showing some level of traction. But in Airbnb's case, they're showing that they're going to do it better. They're going to do it more personalized or tailored to this exact group. Okay. Now, what I think would have been interesting here would be them showing that they've already run trials, right? They've already had 20 users, 50 users go through their pilot, even if it was not digital, even if it wasn't automated. So these types of things, showing wait lists, users, pre-sales, these things can really support your market validation. Now for you, what I would invite you to do is to really check in. Can you show really quickly that you are ahead of the game compared to 90% of other startups? So here's what I invite you to do if you're looking at your market validation. In your pitch deck, you really want to show that you're a standout startup. And in which way? Not in some surface level way, but showing that you've got substance and evidence. You've actually got proven results in your venture. So to really emphasize this point, let me read a quote from the book Angel by Jason Calacanis, who is a well-known investor who invested companies like Uber and Trello in their early days. So he says, in my experience, getting in too early is the cardinal mistake of new angel investors. Here is what I see in the market, back of the envelope, and it should give you pause. 99% of people who write an idea on the back of a napkin never do it. 95% of people who write a business plan never execute on it. 90% of people who build a prototype never build an MVP. 80% of people who build an MVP never do a beta test. And 80% of people who do a beta test never incorporate. So now, I don't think that this is a statistical analysis in a perfect sense. But can you see from an investor's point of view, the quicker that you can show you're further along against this line of progression, the better it's going to be for you, because investors want to know that you're not just talking hot air and fluff. They want to know you're out there on the ground doing work, getting customers, getting things across the line, and that you can influence things in reality, not just in your fantasy and theoretical mind. So coming back to the pitch deck, that's the one thing that I would say would be a gap for Airbnb in this stage. Now, I believe that they actually did some trials and things, and maybe they talk about that in more depth, but from the slide, the market validation is actually not showing that. So what is there to look at in this market size slide? So first and foremost, you can see that there are clear numbers being presented in terms of the bookings and all the people who would make up their customer base. What we like about this is clean. This, it's not ambiguous what the numbers mean, and putting them there in the clean circles so it's not overwhelming. I think they've done this well. Now, in my opinion, they actually go 2 slides later because they go through product, but then they go to business model on slide 7, and they talk about how they take a 10% commission on each transaction. What I would actually say is putting these together would probably make it slightly easier for investors to think about, right? Because they are trying to understand how large is the customer base, but for Airbnb, how are they then going to make income? How are they going to make revenue from that customer base? So let me jump forward to that slide. They say 10% commission on each transaction. They reference the 84 million trips with Airbnb. Now, in this one, there's actually a typo because I believe that shouldn't say dollars. That's the number of trips that they have. And then they are saying that they are taking a $25 average fee based on the typical number of nights and cost on their platform of what the booking would be. And that would be a $2.1 billion projected revenue. So what is there to notice about this for you and your startup? Having really clear figures, and essentially they are embedding a promise inside their pitch. They are saying, as founders, we see this market. We believe we can serve these people, and here is the exact number that we're aiming for. We are looking to get these 84 million, people/bookings, onto the platform. We want to charge this fee, which we think is justified from our product, and this would turn into this substantial revenue, which we think we can hit, in their case, in a 2 to 3 year period. So why is this important? Because as an investor, why do investors invest? They are there to make a return. You see, if they are going to invest $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, And if they can't then see what value they potentially can get in that horizon, then they're not going to invest. Okay, so a lot of the times we look at pitch decks and it's really unclear what exactly is the return on investment to back to the investor, or the potential return on investment, because they may not exit at that point, they may exit at another point. But here you can see, if you were an owner of a company making $2.1 billion of revenue, I mean, we don't even have to do the calculations in terms of the valuation. We just know that it's quite large, right? So I think that they've done a very good job here, making it really clear that there's going to be a strong return and there's a real high potential of this venture. So if you, like Airbnb, got to this point to say that, hey, we're going to go and make this $2.1 billion of revenue, or whatever your target would be, this is the question that typically comes up in the investor's mind. Well, how exactly are you going to do that? And there are ways that you can share this that really have you stand out, and others that just leave you flat on the table. And so this is what we see a lot of. We see a lot of startups having such a great idea. Sometimes they've done all of this amazing work, but the way that they pitch this section, it just has them lie flat on the table. So let's go into that now. Now, one thing before I move forward is I'm going back one slide to the product slide. They say search by city, review listings, and book it. What I really love about this is that it alludes to that a lot of startup founders really don't get this right. They spend so much on the product. Like, I've seen pitches where they just spend 90% of time on their product. They're showing feature 1, feature 2, feature 2.1, 2.2, and they just lose the investor right away. What you want to remember is that the investor at the pitch deck stage, you're just enticing them. This is your FIFA highlights reel. You're just giving them the snippets of something that tantalizes them enough to start booking a meeting with you and potentially going into the due diligence process. So just showing in no uncertain terms, this is what our product does. I think that Airbnb has done this well. But now let's skip over into the adoption strategy. So what I would say here is this is a piece that a lot of founders miss. They show, I'm going to go for this huge goal, I'm going to hit this target. And then when it comes down to the actual strategies of getting customers, it's very blurry, it's vague, right? So what would a vague slide look like? It would say something like, we are looking for $500,000 of our budget to be paid to a sales team. Right? So it would be something that is really wide ranging. Another one is advertising. They just go, so we want 500K for advertising, and then that's where they stop. So what you really want to do, and if we compare this with Airbnb's strategy, can you see how they go adoption strategy? So they are now listing here real events, Oktoberfest, Seabit, Summersfest, Eurocup, Mardi Gras. They are listing real events where they can go and get customers. Yeah. One side piece is it doesn't make it that clear what this number means. It doesn't make it clear whether that is the number of participants in which regions, but you know, they probably would then zoom in and talk about that. But can you see that these are real activities, yeah, and marketing campaigns that the startup can do? If you're sitting there as an investor, you're imagining what this team is going to do. Okay, and this is something that gives you an indication of how they would lead their team. Do they just lead their team by going, hey, go and advertise our startup? Or do they go, hey, let's go to Oktoberfest. Let's put this offer out and get people through the door. So I really, think that that is something they've done well. Then you've got partnerships, cheap alternative travel. Now note that they just did not say partnerships and left it there. They are being very specific, cheap alternative travel. They already understand their brand. They're already being selective with whom they want to partner. And then they're listing 3 logos. Now that speaks so much. It's the whole an image speaks 1,000 words. By them putting those logos there, now we would assume that they've actually built relationships with these groups. We're not just stealing logos and putting them on a pitch deck. And by the way, you want to be careful of that, right? Because a lot of investors will be trying to read between the lines, whether you're just trying to make your startup look good or whether you have substance, whether you've actually secured those partnerships, for example. And then we've got Craigslist, the dual posting feature. So this is where they are saying that they're going to help people post on multiple platforms. So if you can see, there ends up being this really clear, vivid picture of how that company, how that founding team are entering the market. They can imagine customers coming on board. I think that this is a disproportionately valuable slide that would really hook investors. Now let's go to the competition slide. So first and foremost, I don't think that there's anything overly amazing here. I think that this is relatively standard. You want to understand the landscape of the different players in your field. You want to be aware of them. This can be a red flag for one of your investors, especially if they know your industry. You see, if someone knows hotels.com and you didn't put it there, they would gauge that perhaps you haven't done your full research. But what I want to zoom in with this one is look at the 2 dimensions that Airbnb chose. And this is really crucial for you and your company. They've chosen affordable to expensive and then online versus offline. Notice that you can choose any dimensions that you want. That's up to you. And it shows your awareness about how you think that you're going to add that extra or unique value above and beyond your competitors. Now, the thing that I want to pick on here, not for Airbnb, because I think that they knew what they were doing when it came to affordable versus expensive. So with the over 800 startups our team has worked with, we've seen many times that people just throw in this whole thing about affordability, about low price. They have this type of default sense that if it's lower price, everyone will want to buy it. Now, that's not untrue, but if you don't have a deeper model that allows you to provide those low prices, then that would turn into just lower margins in your business and it wouldn't be profitable for investors. Does that make sense? So if I look at Airbnb, they were going and hiring private people's apartments and then they were leasing them out. So they have an underlying model or way that they can provide lower cost accommodation. If you were just going up against hotels.com and everyone is trying to book the same hotels, it's very difficult for you to provide a lower price unless you just reduce your margin. So is that clear? So you want to really look for this, choose the dimensions that really have you stand out, but make sure that you can back them with something substantial. So next, Airbnb goes into competitive advantages. Again, what I love here, which seems to be a theme across this whole pitch deck, is they just put 6 really simply listed items, no fluff. First to market, host incentive, list once, ease of use, profiles, design, and brand. Again, I'm not going to even zoom into that. I just think it's really crisp and it shows that they know who they are. They know how they want to stand out. And then they're not trying to overly push that there's such a unique thing. It's, they're just showing it quite matter of fact. Then they have the team slide. Now, again, I think this one keep really simple. They've got pictures, they've got headings, they know who's who, they've got a bit of a subtitle for each user, and then they've got a little blurb. Again, this one I don't think needs to be overdone. I don't think you have to put it with 20 people. I've seen people put so many different additional advisors and people who are just... Now this one is press. I think that this one is more unique for Airbnb. I think it's great to put this in if you have it, but this is showing an existing amount of traction that you have. I think that this is not about a press slide, right? I don't think every startup will just be talking about their media exposure because it's not necessarily the marketing angle that they'll all go through. I think what's great here is this shows that they are in market and they have real people who are saying that they're good. Okay, they're giving them that proof and that type of testimonial. And in this case, this one goes beyond only users and it's going to these media brands. Now, in saying that, the next slide is user testimonials, which I think is great. Now, one thing, I was actually sitting with one of the startups that we're working with, and they were putting in all of these quotes there of the user testimonials. However, this is the exact same thing I was saying to them. Put in the photos, right? Really show that there are real users there. Get people to connect with them. So this quickly shows that you're not just creating fake testimonials. Obviously, you could still, just doctor that, but it makes it one step more proof that an investor is looking at a group who has been working with real users. You've validated real things in real life, and then you're giving that quote of what they love about you. So I think that that's great. And so notice that these are real photos. And what a lot of companies do, they firstly either put in stock photos or they are putting in AI generated photos. Both of these are things that anyone can reproduce easily. What you want to do is show screenshots, show real people's faces of your customers, using your product ideally. So the more you can do that, you put yourself in a category amongst all of these other startups, showing that you're one of the ones who are out there in the field getting the real results. We're now about to go into the last slide, but interestingly enough, this slide is often completely missed by many startups. It's like they've dribbled the ball all the way up to the goal and then they haven't shot and scored. So what we are going to go through, pay attention to this one, because while it can be a short slide, might not have a lot of information, it can be the difference between you having someone who is excited but never contacts you or books a meeting versus someone who goes, yes, let's talk today, tomorrow, let's start getting into the details. So this is the financial slide. What are you actually looking for? I know it sounds a bit shocking, but literally a lot of startups, they just put their company up there and then they hope that the investor will somehow magically know what they want. So they are being extremely clear here with Airbnb. We are looking for 12 months financing. So notice that they are being very mindful and they are stating obviously, this is what it's going to give them. Okay, 12 months of runway of operations. They are then having a target. So imagine if I just say, hey, will you pay me money to run my company for a year? Compared to give me money to run my company in a year. And inside of that, I promise that I'm going to meet 80,000 paid transactions. Okay, so you don't want to miss one or the other. And then they are going into the investment opportunity of the $500,000. Obviously, that's what they were asking. And then I believe that they got more investment than that. So this is important because if you don't have a figure, so some people actually have this and then they leave out a figure. So it's guesswork. That's like going to a shoe store and then there's no prices on the shoes and you have to ask about everything and it ends up being a huge negotiation. You want to go that this is what we're looking to raise, right? We've thought this through. This is what we need. And then they are showing that with that, they're going to be getting something. Okay, so raising funds is not a one-way street. It's not like you're winning money from the lottery. You're having money from a partner who is being a financial partner and they expect you to put that money to good hard work and create a result. In this case, it is extremely clear what Airbnb is saying. They're going, we're going to take that money, 80,000 trips, $25 average fee. With that, we're going to bring $2 million of revenue into the bank, okay, over 12 months. Clean timelines. They know their targets. Based on the pitch deck previously, we know exactly how they are going to do it. This is a recipe for success. And I think it's quite self-evident to go from 600K investment going into these 80,000 trips, but then today being a $70 billion company, I think it sort of speaks for itself. Now note, if you yourself are a high potential startup founding team and you're going through the phase of starting out, launching, or going through your growth, you may want to speak to our team at Ingenesis Ventures, and the link to that will be below. If you want more support in being effective at raising funds for your startup, knowing how VCs think, there are more videos here and you can subscribe as we release more in the future. Until next time, I will see you soon.